Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life.
Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Lana Morris. Lana does tech and website development, but I've not invited her on for that reason. My reason for inviting her was I met her at a networking meeting and she gave the most insightful talk about creating your own. Oh, what's the word I want? Sorry, my brain's still not functioning properly, folks. Course, that's the word. Thank you. And it fascinated me because she could see that behind the tech, there was a human being rather than what we often see of the tech with the human being. So I asked Lana to come and share her insights. And Lana, I'm going to hand it over to you because if I talk much more, I dread to think what's going to come out. So welcome. Please introduce yourself and tell us what we need to know about being human with tech rather than tech with a human.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I really appreciate it. So yes, I'm Lana Morris. I'm normally known as that woman tech, but my business is expanding. And one of the reasons for that was kind of rediscovering who I was within my business. And because I help people with websites, with a concierge service, and primarily my passion being online courses. That's how we met, because I was seeing that a lot of women who are going into their own business are doing so because they're truly, truly passionate and skilled at what they want to do. But they were often getting overwhelmed with the tech and not understanding how to piece it all together. And then we're ending up spending far too much time trying to firefight tech problems than actually being able to do what they wanted to do and the services that they offered. And so my business sort of arrived on the scene just after the pandemic. My background as a psychic, holistic therapist, color coach, and prior to that incarnation, I used to work at university creating courses, degrees, master degrees, PhD seminars. What I was seeing in the tech space when I pivoted was, first of all, there's a lot of demystifying needed to go on because women were buying, and not just women, there were men as well, but primarily women were buying website packages, funnels, going and hearing all the amazing things that these things did. But then when they actually had them, didn't know how they worked, and either had to rely on a web developer, a web designer, a techie to get it all working for them, which was often causing lots of money and lots of stress, or they were having to spend hours and hours and hours of their time trying to figure out how to get the tech to support their business. So I kind of started seeing these patterns where it was just getting people further and further away from the very passion that they went into. And it was mirroring in my own business, because 18 months ago, I got to the place where I hated my business. It was working well. It was relatively successful. Financially, it was stable. But I was bored, and I was looking at it and thinking, why am I getting bored doing other people's tech? And I also have a chronic health condition, which I have to be therefore very careful about how I protect my own energy. And so that kind of led me into a very strange side quest into, okay, who am I? What am I here to do? Who am I here to serve? And how do I best do it? And that led me into revisiting Jungian archetypes for shadow our shadow side, that area we repress, suppress, often, as you know, Karen, stemming through childhood and patterns that we continue to do to kind of self-sabotage. And so part of that Jungian psychology is being able to bring those out so that we can integrate them and become more holistic, more whole. So I kind of started off there and then and then fell into human design, which I know that you also know a lot about. And although I had seen human design about 10 years ago and I got my chart, I took one look and thought, oh my God, I can't understand this. It's lots of numbers, columns, things, dots and lines and things. I don't understand. So I kind of dumped it and thought, no, too much for me. And human design, as you know, is based on astrology, the I Ching, both of which are very old systems. Also touches on the Kabbalah content and also the chakra system. And I suppose now we're moving into the sort of new era of things. It's also connected to quantum mechanics and quantum physics. So I kind of got intrigued and thinking, okay, is this going to be able to kind of give me the answers to what I'm looking for and why I'm feeling trapped in my business and don't really know how to evolve and change it? And so I went off into a very, very, very deep dive, and I was absolutely staggered by the results, how I resonated so much with what I was discovering and really unpeeling all the layers, and thinking, oh my God, this is me. This is me. And I discovered that my business model was not supporting my natural energy through human design. And that was such a big aha because I was trying to do, as lots of business people do, be consistent, put out stuff every week, market consistently, offer consistently. And I'm not a consistent person. I'm a manifester. And I discovered that my energy was a kind of surge and then a sloth. I could do loads and loads of work in 2 or 3 days, perhaps more so than most people would do in a week or so. But then I need to go and rest. And so I had built my business based on a consistent pattern of delivery. And over time, it was draining me and I felt absolutely exhausted. And so I realized that it wasn't the clients. I loved my clients, but my model was just in total misalignment with who I naturally am as a manifester. So that has led me to completely deconstruct, revamp my own business. And now I am there to support people who, particularly women, who know they've built something very successful in their business model, but it no longer feels like them. And it feels like a bit of a cage, and they're waking up feeling dread and they're starting to get anxious, and all these shadow aspects that we perhaps don't talk about very much when we're in business. I feel sometimes because we're all expected to be successful, or we're all expected to hustle or achieve or use a cookie cutter approach, and all these terms that are bandied around. But I think when we strip it back, we start to see, is it really in alignment with our energetic signature?
And that's what I discovered with my own human design, is I used to just keep pushing through and sort of basically judging myself because I wasn't doing as much as I should have been. And I was actually exhausted. I was exhausted because of having to deal with family dynamics that was impacting me anyway. But then I was trying to run a business that was so mismatched with who I actually am. And that's what I realized with the sloth or beaver cards is I created them, but I created them by going through stages of actual massive workload and then totally stepping back.
Yeah.
And that works for me. And I'm still working on that basis now because it's like this realization that if I just push, something collapses.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be in another place of a nervous breakdown because I've just gone back into that energy of I've just got to I've got to do. And I'm sure so many listeners recognize that behavior. So
yes, yeah. And I would just say there that we are conditioned to think that keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going is the right way to do business. And I kind of want to get the message across to disrupt that is no, it's not. For some people, it absolutely is. But for others, if they know their human design is not built for consistency, it will just drain you. So it's just that acknowledgement that it isn't your fault. It's actually a misalignment, and that's all that it is.
So how did you dismantle to rebuild?
Oh gosh, right. Well, that was kind of interesting because on the one hand, I suddenly had this surge of energy because it felt so right that the momentum kicked in. And so I started unpicking, working out firstly what aspects of the business were actually okay and working. And ironically, as I was doing my own human design, I started seeing where unconsciously I was already working within my design. And those were the bits that felt right. And then I could sort of start identifying why the bits that didn't feel right. And I could track back to see actually that's not part of my design. So for me, and obviously human design is another toolkit, part of your toolkit is another lens to look through things. So for some people, they'll be really attracted to looking at it, and for others, it's like, no, there might be something else out there for me that's more resonant. So I would highly recommend always go and have a look for other things. But for me personally, it resonated. And so I began with working out, okay, the stuff that works can stay and the stuff that doesn't, it was a trick I learned from my business coach, which was, can I accept it? Can I change it? Or can I walk away from it? So thank you to Claire Bell, if she's listening, who's my business coach. And those summarizing in those three ways helped me realize, yes, I could change it. I didn't want to walk away from it. So I was going to accept it, but accept it in the sense that it's ready to be changed. So I would love to say at this point, all of my clients were hooray. But as a manifester, my my energy is to inform once I've done something, as opposed to wait for somebody to tell me. So off I went to build this. It felt right. It absolutely seemed the right step, and it is the right step for me and my business. But along the way, although everything began to take a clarity and I began shifting things around in my business. So rather than being consistent, I was actually outsourcing some of that consistency to a generator because they are consistent. They're great. And therefore I could, create with the surging energy, inform, pass it on to a generator, and then they would undertake some of the tasks that required that consistency. So it didn't mean I had to completely drop that. It just meant I had to find a different way of enabling that to be delivered. So on the upside, my business got clarity and it started attracting the ideal clients that were also in this kind of, not all manifestors, but were finding that their business model was no longer fitting them, or that sense of being uncomfortable or kind of overwhelmed and caged in. But the downside was I also I lost a lot of clients pretty much within the week of going down this route. And then all of a sudden I had a panic thinking, oh my God, have I done the right thing? Everybody's leaving. Oh my God, it wasn't everybody, but it felt like that, and I'd never had that in my business. Some of these were long-standing clients. And so it was a lot of firstly thinking through as we naturally do as humans, it's my fault. What have I done? But then when I started looking at it from the design aspect, it's like, no, my business is going through what quantum physics often will call a natural quantum deselection or an energetic deselection. As you're opening your doors to new energies and evolving, there will be a natural drop off. And so once I realized that was happening, and it took a little while, but once I realized it was like, okay, that's absolutely fine. And that's showing me, if I believe as I do in the universe as being a co-creator and some law of attraction, that actually this is a sign for me that I'm moving into my rightful evolution, and therefore there will be a natural drop off, because I'm not, if you like, vibrating at the same frequency. So yeah, so that's where we got to.
And I can appreciate that, because business wise, I realized there was things in my business that I was doing that after a while didn't feel right. And that's one of the reasons why I stopped running my own secretarial business, because I realized it was all computer based. Yes, I was speaking with clients and their customers and such like that, but it was computer based. I'm a teacher. I'm a person that teaches and educates. And like, how can I educate a computer? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the thing is tech in my world, in Lana world, tech is only ever there as a supporting mechanism. So if you imagine an aeroplane, for example, it has an undercarriage. That undercarriage helps with the process of supporting the structure of the plane. And for me, tech is how I believe that should be for tech. You know, it's not there to dominate or take over the business. It's there to support the smooth delivery of the business to the clients. And whether you are a Reiki practitioner, the tech would be a booking form where it may take payment as they book in. That tech's there to support, but it's not taking away from the actual service of the experience of Reiki and the healing benefits of it.
So, out of interest, as a generator, because you talk about a manifester, what does a generator do? What kind of experience? Because I think generators are more prevalent than manifestors are.
Indeed, they
So,
are. Yes.
can you
Yeah.
explain more about what a generator is?
Yeah, so I always align my thinking, my little mental picture of a generator is like the Duracell bunny. No, there are other batteries out there. I should just say that. But it is that they have a consistent energy. Now there are differences between generators themselves because, you know, as you know, that because this is based on your time of birth, your place of birth, and your date of birth, we're all going to have some unique facets and aspects, but primarily generators are the builders of they do and do and do, and they're very able to do that very well. They have a consistency of their energy. They are people who often wait to be asked to do something. They don't necessarily initiate. Now, that doesn't mean in your business you don't sit there and think, oh, I need to put some marketing out as a generator, but I have to wait for somebody to tell me. That's not what it means. But what it does mean is it's an energy. So if you can see in your business as a generator that you need to do some marketing, you would then be looking at how and what marketing activities would best suit you as a generator. So there are some interesting language terminology that is used in human design, some of which can be very confusing, I'll be honest, because when I started deep diving and started hearing split definitions and you're a valleys or you're a kitchen, and I'm like, what on earth does this mean? But they are kind of representations of the energy types that you might see or feel. So generators are pretty consistent. They like to build, but they like to wait to hear what an idea is. So it's a marriage in heaven, really, between a manifestor and a generator, because a manifestor is, as we've discovered, is a surge and then rest energy, or surge sloth, as I like to call it, because it's much, you know, as you know, with the sloth and beaver, it's slower energy, very restful kind of movement. Whereas the generator, if you give them an idea, they'll work out how to actually implement and get it into action without you having to think too much about it. So they are very capable. They often will have, several projects on the go, and they will be able to deliver consistently with their energy. There are some generators that are more, depending on their incarnation cross, will have some shadow tendencies, like some may hermit too much, for example. And if they
Know that
do,
one.
then they can isolate too much. They do need to be around people. But there are different facets, and that's very, very much dependent on your, as I say, your birth date, time. Your design itself will give you the specific, unique facets of you. And I think that's what I loved most about diving into human design is it's also like a never-ending journey, because there is so much to learn that yeah, it's a bit like one little bite at a time, and then build up that knowledge.
That makes sense for me because I know from my numerology and astrology, and obviously with the human design, that I am a generator, but I'm also partly manifester. So there are that elements of I will create, 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 and then I just have to stop. It was fascinating because I could see the connection between the astrology, and even now, as I look at what's been happening astrologically, I can see the energy that I put in, rested, put in, rested. So it all connects in totally. And my numerology, my life path is the one which is very much about that leader, that entrepreneur aspect. So it all ties in, which is why for me, learning about yourself and knowing yourself, whether it's as human design, whether it's even just going for learning about Reiki or experiencing Reiki, it gives you a knowledge about yourself that can make a difference to how you live your life. And
Absolutely.
as a human design, I would say educator, what would you say to somebody who hasn't yet learned about themselves?
Oh, I would say it's the biggest gift you could give yourself is to know who you are. I feel that we kind of, from the moment of birth, we get kind of told who we are by our parents and how they parent, by significant others in our childhood. We learn our ethics and our morals through those family lenses, and as we begin to develop our own identity, that is already shaped by our experiences through childhood. And this is a big close to my heart, because one of my aspects in one of the gates in my human design is ancestral patterns, and I'm here to break my ancestral patterns. Now, that often can manifest in your family relationship as being the so-called black sheep of the family, or the disruptor, or the, you know, in the kindest way of looking at it, the pioneer, actually dismissing some of those old family beliefs and patterns in order to set a sense of more health and well-being. And I don't mean that necessarily in monetary terms. I mean the health of the family, the health of generational patterns coming to an end. If you think about the way, for example, your grandparents might have had beliefs around money, and how that has moved through our generations to us. Mine, for example, was, I remember as a child going to a supermarket. My parents were doing the weekly shop, and pointing, I was very, very young, and pointing to a packet of biscuits. And I remember so distinctly my dad saying, don't even ask for biscuits, we can't afford it. And at the time, you don't realize the impact that then has on your own money beliefs growing up. And for us, it's not just that. So these influences that we have mean that we don't really know our true selves. And why I'm so passionate about human design and also understanding our shadows through those Jungian archetypes is because when we recognize our shadows, when we bring an awareness to them, then we can start working out, who am I? Who am I? What do I do here? Why am I here? Who am I here to serve? Who am I here to create business for? What benefits do I get from creating that business? And how do I deliver my business in a way that suits my true soul, if you like? Who do I and how do I work in alignment with who I am? And one of the benefits that I've seen from human design is because it goes through on your date of birth and time of birth and is generated from that, you haven't had the chance to then be kind of influenced by the patterns that you come to. So even when you look at things like, the personality types of quizzes, which I have to say, I love a quiz. But I always take them slightly tongue in cheek because they are the version of me that was created from the ancestral patterns that I had and I had generated through or worked through or not worked through. Whereas for me, human design that was me at the point of birth before all of those influences came to rest themselves and wrap around my life.
Very, very true. I know from experience that as I started to explore who I was because of my nervous breakdown, it gave me that space. I recognized how much ancestral history I carried.
Yeah.
And that was such an eye-opener because it's not until you start looking back that you realize, well, my great-grandparents did this, so my grandparents did this, and my mum and dad did this, and so I have to do it. So it's fascinating just how much we do not know about ourselves. And that's what I love about human design is it will give you those insights. Yes, you can ask the questions yourself, and that's what I did a lot of. But having that clarity, especially as it ties specifically to your time and date of birth, because planetary positions influence us far more than a lot of us realize. So for me, just even taking the time out to look at your astrology, your numerology, your human design, family history, it just changes how you see yourself and how you operate in life, but also in your business. And as women, we forget that we can create the life we want.
Yes.
And not just follow the old patterns.
Absolutely. And I think what really kind of sort of really hit home for me is, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, I have a chronic health condition. So I was diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia back in 2012. And at the time of diagnosis, it was literally 6 months after I'd been made redundant from university and 6 months into my brand new well-being business. And all of a sudden, everything that I'd built, I just had to stop because I was in, quite seriously ill and needed a lot of treatment. When I started delving into my human design, I did ask the question, how on earth, given that there was no history of blood cancers or any cancers in my family, how on earth did I manage to attract this one? When I started reading my design, one of my other gates is around the notion of the life force in the body and carried through the blood. And the moment I read that, I'm like, ancestral pattern, life force carried in the blood. Oh my goodness. Now I have a better understanding of why I've managed to have this come into my life. And rather than seeing it, and this is a very personal thing because not everybody has that belief around illness. So for me personally, it was an understanding that, wow, okay, there is something more spiritual for me going on here. And the more I can learn myself out of ego, but the more I can understand myself, the more I can understand the behaviors, the shadows, and the patterns that I was doing that led to me becoming chronically ill with leukemia, rather than, leaving it to think, oh, well, it is just a medical thing. For my personal belief system, I truly believe that we're always co-creating with the universe, and therefore there is a lesson to be learned within holding this particular health condition. But what it did do was force me to start looking deeper. And I'm very grateful for that, because having discovered human design, and there's other healing modalities out there, I'm a color mirrors practitioner, so I do a lot of color psychology and understanding the emotional connection. I do clinical hypnotherapy. There's a lot of other modalities over the years that I have trained in and used. But above all of them, I would say human design has been the most specific in understanding who I am.
On that note, thank you very, very much, Lana, for such an insightful conversation. I'm sure that many of the listeners will see why they behave as they do and will want to know more now, because unless you know yourself, you don't know what you're doing unintentionally. And like you, I had a health issue that I recognized was tied in to family history and family behavior and all the rest of it. And like you, it was like, oh, right, so now I understand this, I can do something about it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to being able to continue growing and using human design to understand myself, and I hope more people can do so. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Karen.